was given to us by the health department. So all of them are on the website, and you have access to look at those documents even while we're talking. We might not have all the answers tonight to your questions. We'll try to answer as much as we possibly can, but I also don't want to put out false information. None of us do. We want to try to give you the best information that we have currently right now. If there's something that we do not have or cannot answer, we will get back with you or try to get back with you and let you know that answer. So we'll do the best we can tonight. This is an opportunity for you as parents to hopefully feel a little more comfortable. Either if you're sending your kid back online, whatever venue you want to choose for your kid to learn this year. Our role is to try to make it as safe as possible and get our kids back in school and get them going and educating them. So with that, we'll get started with some questions. Any of the principals or myself will jump in and ask any of your questions, and we'll get started with that. So I don't know how you're going to do the question part of if somebody's going to raise their hand or how you're picking, but
I'd say unmute.
Yeah, go ahead if you have
unmute and ask a question, and we'll try to give you an answer. Anybody?
Hi, this is Crystal Pitcher. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so is the only option either online or in person? There's no like hybrid?
There's not considered a hybrid that you come a couple of days and you stay home a couple of days. What we have is we call it a remote learning using our Teams platform, so that so teachers every day will be logging into Teams, and we're asking if you're home with your kids. If you chose the remote learning, then it would be that you would log on, they would log on to Teams as well from 8 to 3, and they would be able to participate in the classroom just like they were there. And in our elementary, we're trying to get it so that they can actually see what's the instruction that's going on. So we're working to be able to provide videos, not necessarily of each individual kid, but maybe of the classroom activity. So if the child is home, a younger child is home, they would be able to see the activity and participate as well with the teachers there. So that's what we consider remote learning. So it's not an online option. It's like you're just not in school, but you're in school at your home the same way. The online version is through a third-party offer, and that would be it. So there's actually 3 different ways. You can come face-to-face, stay at home and do the remote learning so that you log on and part of the classroom every day, or the third one is the online, which is through a different party.
Okay, thank you. Another question, and perhaps this is in the policies, and I'll be honest, I didn't go onto your website yet and look at all that thoroughly, but what are the classes going to look like for the students that go into class?
Which grade level?
Well, I have a sophomore and I have a kindergartner.
Well, I can answer the kindergartner. They would go in, so they have to wear a mask coming into the hallway. We recommend that they wear a mask all day, but we're not gonna, it's just highly recommended that they do. So if they can separate them as well, but the classroom will be set up so if this is our table, they would have one on either end and maybe one in the middle, so they're at least about 3 feet apart from each other, all and facing the teacher. That way, if any time that they are in a small group situation or on the carpet, things like that, they would be wearing, the teacher would ask them to put their mask on. If the teacher works with them individually, they would have a plexiglass shield from the teacher and the student, so that the student and the teacher will be wearing their face masks all day. So that's the general outlook of it. We try to fit as many kids as we can within that, range of 2 to 3 feet. We'd love to have 6 feet, but our classrooms are just not big enough. Yeah, and most of our specials will be inside the classroom, so they won't move outside the hallway. Gym will be outside, so that they could, as long as the weather permits and things like that. And so they would be spread out outside on the playground and things like that. Lunch is going to be inside the classroom, so they would bring lunch to the kids in there, so they would not have to walk through the hallways to the high school to get in the cafeteria to get lunch. So pretty much we're going to try to keep that whole classroom together by themselves. So they won't mix, and outside at recess, they would be separate designations. Like this class would be playing over here, and this class could be playing over there. So we're trying to set it up that way.
Right, on the high school side, masks will be required for all the students while they're in the building. We have done a few things such as staggering lunch times. So, oh, we gotta get that TV. That's gonna turn off on us.
How do you hit okay?
Sorry, yeah, I hit that.
You hit okay. Where at?
Yeah.
You're the tech guy. All right.
Okay, so on the high school side, we're gonna stagger lunches to only allow so many kids in the cafeteria at a time. Again, like I said, masks will be required by all the students while they're in the building. And hand sanitizer will be cleaning surfaces, all those types of things. We're gonna try and keep students in their own locker as much as possible. And if we do have to pair up kids with lockers, we're gonna try and keep siblings, kids that from the same household together, so that we're not having kids from different households sharing lockers. So those are some of the things that we're doing specifically COVID related. Crystal, I don't know if there was anything, if you had questions about the instruction. I mean, that's going to be pretty much typical within the classroom. I don't know if that answered your question, or if there was something else that you wanted to talk about with that.
No, that's a great response. I appreciate that. I do want to follow up though with the elementary, with the small children. High school students are required to wear the mask. Why are we not requiring the young kids to wear masks?
It's not according to the statement from, or the guidance from MDE or from the government or governor, they had highly recommended that they wear masks, but it was not required for grades K through 5 if they stayed within their own cohort. So that's why they're not leaving their classroom to go to another classroom. They're not mingling with each other. They're not going to be by each other. So if we can keep them in their own cohort, then they're not required to wear a mask. We are, same thing. I'll send out the letter. I'm asking my teachers to send out the letter to ask parents to say, please, it's highly recommended that your child wear it. We understand that they might not be able to wear it all the time, and there will be situations where they have to wear it on the bus, in the hallway, anytime they have to go to their locker, if they, things like that we would try to minimize, but we need to make sure that they do it. So it's not mandated that they wear it, but it's highly recommended. So we're asking you the same thing. As a parent, we're asking you to, highly recommend that you do it as well.
The state law required, the state law required for kids to come back 6/12 as mandatory. And that was basically the only mandatory requirement by the state of Michigan. Everything else becomes strongly recommended. Obviously, we're taking the strongly recommended that, as Mrs. O'Connor said, that we encourage that if you want to send a mask and have a mask with your kid, that's fine. We encourage it, but we didn't take the requirement in K-5.
This is Katie talking. Now I heard them say with the teachers are going to have the plexiglass type by their desk with students one-on-one. Now, why is the kids at the table? Why wouldn't they have the plexiglass set up or the plastic set up so where they're away from each other, especially the elementary when they're not required to wear a mask, and they're only being 3 feet apart when the recommendation is technically 6 feet apart, especially with the littler ones. Why is there going to be like no shield to protect our children with the other ones?
A couple of things on the 6 foot apart. We can't in Ubly to have kids come one-to-one. There's no way in Ubly with our classroom size to put kids 6 foot apart. It's not possible. Which that is pretty standard in a lot of school districts. That we just can't physically do 6 foot apart. The mask wearing will be the choice of a student. in the elementary to wear a mask. If we're working with the teacher one-on-one and there's other kids there, we did put the shield up, but to put a shield up or anything like that, with the movement that happens in an elementary classroom, I don't think it would be quite feasible with the amount of movement that happens in an elementary classroom. So what we encourage you to do, Katie, is have your kids wear a mask. We hope, most parents have their kids wear a mask. Again, will be contained for most of their day. They will be contained in that classroom, and that went with the guidelines from the state. The 6 foot requirement, we can't meet physically as a school district. So with the movement, we just thought that might hinder kids in the classroom more, because it's just not like high school classrooms where they're more lined up in rows and they can sit there and meet all day. There's a lot of movement in the elementary classroom.
Now, was there ever talk about, because I know a lot of schools, especially in the Tuscola County area, a lot of schools are doing where they're only going to schools 2 days a week, Wednesdays, the rest they're off for cleaning. Then this way, other kids can go, some kids stay home. This way they could follow by those rules.
We did not, I know of one school district in Tuscola that's doing that. We did not take that concept, that's a hybrid concept where they go 2 days and maybe they're alternated and then they have a deep cleaning day. We didn't choose that as a concept in our group. When we put the plan together, we chose to go all face-to-face and try to do the best we can with our social distancing, our masks, our sanitizer. We believe we have a pretty good plan. Obviously, we're going to count on parents to help us out with that and the community to help us out with that, along with our own staff here in school.
And then if somebody is tested positive for the COVID, how are you guys going to inform the parents, and how are you guys going to handle that situation with the school?
Well, obviously, that would be a situation that if a student or staff member has contracted COVID and tests for it, we would contact the health department first. We would take their guidance. We would send out a notification to parents and family. Obviously, we would have to protect confidentiality because of HIPAA and all that. We would probably close. I don't know if we completely close the school, but we at least close probably for a day in Ubly, clean the school, and then take our guidance from the health department on how we would further address that issue. Parents would be notified, and then, of course, you would have to decide as a parent what you would want to do with your child. But that's kind of how we kind of got those guidelines. There's a guideline on the website that says process for a COVID-19 case at school that you can read through and take a look at. But obviously, that's not going to be a decision by any school district, not just Ubly. That'll be a decision that'll be in coordination with the health department.
Okay, and then for the cold and flu season that's coming around the corner, what are you guys, or precautions are you guys taking with that? So let's say a kid does come in there with a cold, they sneeze, or they do have a cough, not related COVID, not flu symptoms. Are you guys going to be recommending that these children go to the doctor, get tested, or what are you guys going to recommend at that point in time?
Basically, I think that we would recommend that if they think that they have symptoms of any kind, if it's the fever, runny nose, whatever else, we may ask you to stay at home. But then again, the guidance from the health department was if they are fever-free and don't have any, it's not a persistent cough or the persistent symptoms, then they are allowed to come back in. But we would probably at first say, let's do a remote learning from home today, instead of coming in and just making sure that that's the case. If it persists, then we would, we can't guarantee that, we can't make somebody take a test.
And some of those policies would be the same. We'd have a school nurse, the kid, if they're not feeling good, would come down. We'd contact the parent, go through the procedure that we went through, pre-COVID. Obviously, we ask the parents to keep an eye on a child's fever, not to send them to school. Persistent cough, those type of things that we know, loss of taste and smell, those type of things that we would want you to monitor and then let us know. But to say that a kid would be kept out because maybe they have a cold, I don't think that's the case. And I think people have to understand with COVID-19, it's evolving. It's not something that's static and stays the same. It's evolving, and as we're getting new information, we're getting ways of handling it, and we're getting that new information from the health department. We know that the cold and flu season will be an area that we'll have to take a look at, as all school districts will, of how we actually work through that. But it would be a standard practice. You know, we're looking at that fever part is the big key, and some of those other things I mentioned.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thanks. We do have a lot of questions piling up in the chat here, so let's try to tackle some of these here. Kaylee, asked, is there any talk of exclusively online learning to start the year? As of right now, we are in phase 4, which phase 4, 5, and 6 would be in-person learning. Now, again, if you did receive that letter, you'll notice that you do have the option to keep your child home, and they could do online learning, but we would be in class, and those parents that are comfortable and willing to send their kids to school, we would have them in the school building. So that is how we plan to start the year as of right now. If we were to move back to phase 3, of course, then it would be exclusively online. So that we would follow that guideline coming from the governor and from the state of Michigan. Another one here. From Crystal Kohler. If we are doing a live option, if they cannot be live, will they be considered absent? No, we know that there will be issues with connections, and we know that there will be some times where kids won't necessarily be able to be there, whether they have something else going on or whatever the case may be. So we will be recording the lessons and posting them so that even if you do miss that live, you should still be able to go back and pull that video and watch it later on in the day. Now, that video itself is probably not going to be the whole 50-minute class period. That video is probably going to be sort of the meat and potatoes, I guess, of what the instruction would be. But we're not going to record when the teacher is going around and just helping kids work on their homework and things like that. But we will record that part where the direct instruction is going on. So that you should be able to come back and access later on that day, even if you did miss while it was live. So I hope that answers your question there, Kaylee. Or I'm sorry, Crystal. I answered a couple of them there.
I wondered if they chose the remote live, that they contact the teacher just to let them know they had the issues or whatever else, so that can consider it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you could certainly contact the teachers and let them know that there was some issues, and we can work through those. Hopefully, they're not too many, but we could work through some of those.
Okay.
K-12 is recorded, just so you guys know. As Mr. Warner pointed out, the instruction piece is always recorded. So as he stated, if I'm up at a whiteboard and I'm doing math problems and talking with kids and giving you the instructional piece, that's recorded. So you as a parent could sit down with your child and go through that in the evening with the teacher there. Obviously, you don't get, the child doesn't get to interact with the teacher because it's a recorded lesson, but all the K-12 lessons are recorded.
All right, and we have one here from Kara Mueller. It says, my son doesn't want to attend school while master required. Is he able to try it first and then switch? Basically switch. So we did talk about this. We would offer a grace period of a week or two. So that grace period could go either way. In other words, you and your child decide that I want to be in school, and you come to school and then he realizes that, you know what, wearing a mask all day, I just can't do it anymore. I think I want to actually switch and do remote learning now. If we did that within the first week or two, we would say, okay, yep, that's fine, we can grant that. Or vice versa. If you started with the online, the distance portion, and you said, you know what, that's not working for me either, I would rather be in person, we would allow that. We're going to go about it almost the same way that we allow class changes. And of course, that's more in the high school than it is in the elementary. But we would give that grace period of, hey, you know what, that class isn't really working for me. I think I want to switch to a different class. We're going to treat this the same way. And this format really isn't working for me. I tried it for a few days and I want to try it another way. So we will be willing to work with you in that case. What we want to stay away from, though, of course, is constantly switching back and forth, and it's where we're halfway through the marketing period and we've already switched 3 or 4 times. We don't want to get into that where we're constantly flipping back and forth, because that is hard for both the student and the teacher, and keeping track of that and the constant switching. So we'll work with you with the first week or 2, and if we want to make a switch, we can work with you on that. But we don't want to make it constantly switching back and forth and changing halfway through and all that other kind of stuff.
And then just to clarify, online learning is by semester. So do they still get a grace period in high school for online learning and then switching back to FaceTime?
I believe we would still be able to do that if you were enrolled in an online course and you wanted to switch to one of our classroom teachers. Within that first week or so, again, the same way we would handle class changes, we could accommodate that. But once we get past that window of the first week or 2, it would be probably not be able to work with that.
Jeremy, thank you for answering that question. I'm really happy with your answer.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right. Well,
Is the virtual option Michigan virtual?
It'll be Edgenuity, Odyssey, those type programs.
E2020. There's a few different options.
It's those type of programs.
Meeting, what is that?
Computer-based program.
You're out
Yeah,
of
I
water?
just wondered if it was Michigan virtual. Okay.
I believe that's one of the options, yes.
Water. You need more water?
And actually, I tell you what that does, there's another one here from Crystal Cole about the third-party online option. That's exactly what you're talking about. So those programs, there's a couple different programs that we run, especially in the high school, where some of those programs do have a teacher on the other end that they are in contact with you, and that's again the company that they're working with you, and they're posting those videos and they're doing the assignments and checking in with your child. But we also have some that are just self-paced. So the modules are all set up. You can go through them as quickly or as slowly, of course, within that semester window as you want. I know there are some students that finish those classes a month early. And once they finish that class, they are done. But those are usually set up. They have assignments, they have readings, they have things that you submit, they have tests, and it's all laid out within that program. And you just work along, like I said, at your own pace. And they do let you know what pace you should be at. So if you're falling behind, you should be along, or vice versa. If you're ahead, then they'll say, hey, you're doing really well, you're on track. So that's the short answer of what those third parties look like.
Yeah.
Jeremy, this is Geraldine. First of all, thank you so much for hosting this Zoom meeting, and kudos to all of your team for the planning that you're doing. I get it. I know what it's like day in and day out, so good job, you guys. I have a follow-up question to the recorded videos. So there's a lot of value in having these lessons recorded for a lot of different reasons. Will they be recorded and available for all students, even the ones that are coming to school? So if they have an appointment or, I don't know, didn't understand something, they could review it?
Yep, absolutely. They will be recorded and they will be posted to Microsoft Teams, and that would be available to any student that's in that class.
That's really great. Thanks.
Our goal when we put this together was, this is beyond COVID. This is how we're going to run Ubly Schools, is that when you get home and you can't figure out an Algebra 2 lesson, that you can log on and help your child with that by watching that video. So this is going to be beyond COVID. When COVID finally is done, let's hope soon, you will continue to have that recording of that instruction.
That's really great for kids. Thank you.
So well, let's do. Corey has his hand up. Corey, if you wanted to unmute and go ahead and did you have a question for us? We'll get you.
Yeah. Is this going to be a semester to semester choice that we would make as parents, where kids go online or person to person with the schooling?
If you choose online, are you talking computer-based program or Microsoft Teams Live where you can see the teacher?
The virtual learning, the online part where you're going to see the teacher. We're just kind of taking precautions on sending the kids for the first semester to see how things are.
If first semester you decided that, hey, you know what, this is good, or this is the semester, you went past the 2-week trial, you're gonna go through the semester, and second semester, you said, hey, you know what, I think we're comfortable, obviously COVID changes, could change by then, and we're comfortable sending you back, we would have no problem bringing you back into the school second semester, if that's what you choose to do.
Yeah.
Okay, and then also, is there gonna be like, you know, instructions on how we're gonna, as parents, make sure the kids get the schooling sent, the work sent in, and stuff like that for us as parents to know how this is working?
There, as far as the online version, yeah.
Yes.
There should be set up a mentor teacher that is here that would be making contact with your student or your child at least twice a week, and then go through that. So they would be able to help them with that process as well. So.
Okay. About the online, where you're using a third party, or talking about
Distance learning,
looking in live to our classrooms?
You know, like the live, it's like a live stream for with the teacher.
Sure.
They would have interaction with the student like they were at school, but basically at home.
So you would have, and in that case, if it was the remote learning that you have that you see live, we would provide all your materials, your books and things like that, that you would need to be able to do that. And then we would set up times that you would be able to, so sometimes you can deliver that through Teams. Elementary also has Seesaw that they will set up with parents, that pictures of homework can be taken so that they can see what they've completed. So it's almost like a seamless flow back and forth. And that's what we're going to try to do, is to make sure that most of the homework is, like, if they have to turn it, everybody has to turn it in that day. Your child will be able to turn it in that day as well, but it'll be electronically through their iPad or whatever else it would be. You know, and if there's anything that can't be turned in that way, then we would make a collection site once a week for you to make sure that you turn in whatever materials that you can.
Okay, and the students would be using your guys' provided iPads, or do we need to provide our own?
Correct. No, we would have to find, like, as we get closer to that day and we know which families, once we make that choice and you make that choice and we know which families are going to need those, then we would set up a collection date for you to pick up your materials, all your paperwork and your iPads to be able to do that.
Okay, thanks a lot. I appreciate the answers.
You're welcome. And that actually runs right into a question that we have here in the chat from Kelly Nodlot, asking about when we'll be able to start getting those materials out to the students that will be at home. And that goes right back to what Yvonne just said, Mrs. O'Connor. We are collecting those letters back from you, and we did give the date of August 24th. We will compile that list of who's doing what, and then we will know, of course, who we need to contact the week before school. So that week of September, or the August 31st to September 4th, or whatever the case may be, that will probably be the week that we will distribute those things. We will contact those individuals and let them know when and where we can distribute those materials for them. So that's when you should look for the materials.
Unlike past years where we had like an iPad distribution night with parent night, we won't be having that this year. So if your child is coming to school, they'll get it the day they come to school, the first day of school. We would ask parents to pick up the iPads the week of the 31st or whatever it is, September 4th or 5th. Because we don't want, obviously, a bunch of parents here standing in the office waiting to pick up their iPad. We like to section that out, as Jeremy said, call you and let you know that. Hey,
what do you want to do with?
I am not teaching him.
Okay. What do I have next?
As far as the next question is, if we choose in-person school and school is shut down again, will the kids be required to be on the computer from 8 to 3, or will it be more flexible to suit our particular family schedule? So that would be that we move to phase 3. And in phase 3, we have kind of a short version. We still would have the login into Teams Live like we have generally. Teachers would be teaching it, but they would do short versions of their class time with it. So it'd be from 8 to maybe 11:30, and then they would have time for parent conference times or things like that for parents to question and go with them that way. So students would be allowed to log in and be part of those sessions, but they would be a shorter version of that.
Yeah, we're looking like an 8 to 11:30 for teachers in K-12 to instruct. So about 3.5 hours. I'm sure there's going to be some breaks in there. So I would say probably looking at 3 hours of instruction. Again, those would be recorded. So if you couldn't be available for that 8 to 3 or 8 to 11, 8 to 11 or 8 to 11 or 8 to 11:30, then you could watch that in the evening. And then there would be office hours for the teachers afterwards with your kids.
Let's go ahead. Looks like Joey Vogel has her hand up for a question. Go ahead, Joey.
Okay, so I know you guys have probably already said this, but I kind of got here late. But my question is, so the kids stayed home and did the virtual learning. So basically, from my understanding, they're going to log in from 8 to 3:30, so they have to be logged in and be watching. How does that work when they're switching in between classes? Are they switching in between classes in school, or the teachers going and switching rooms? How's that all working this year?
I guess you almost have two different questions there. The first part of the question sounded like how the students would view live from home. Is that the first question?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. So yeah, that's where there would be a live stream of the class as it's happening. And again, you could view that video later on in the day if the student couldn't make it there. The student would not necessarily have to be logged in for that entire 52-minute class period, especially if it gets to the point where the instruction is done and kids are now sort of working on their own. If the student wanted to log off and say, okay, I'm just gonna do my homework from home and I don't need to know what's going on in the class anymore. Or they could stay logged in live and say, as they're working through it, hey teacher, I have a question, and they can communicate live with the teacher then. Of course, that'd be around the classroom, whatever, so they might have to come over and answer questions for them, but they could stay on there as long as they want. If you're at home, though, it's as simple as just going ahead and clicking from one class to the next within Microsoft Teams. So that's a pretty quick change there for them. As far as changing classes, with the way high school works and how different kids go to different classes, it just wasn't going to be feasible to keep students in one class and move teachers. So unfortunately, it's going to have to be where the students are still moving. The surfaces will get cleaned in between classes. Desktops and doorknobs and things like that will get wiped down. But the students will be changing, not the teachers. So does that answer both parts of your question then?
It does. And then I have another question. For the kids, what is going to be the rule as far as being exempt to wearing a mask in school? Does that require a doctor note?
Yes.
I mean, what's going to be the
For
rule?
a student to be exempt or an employee, you have to have a medical doctor's note that they do not have to wear a mask in school. So we just follow the state guidelines with that. We don't want to get into the debate, mask or unmask. We just said if you don't want to wear a mask, and that's employee or student, you have to bring in us a doctor's note.
Okay. Alrighty, I think that answers my questions then. Thank you.
Thank you. Jaleesa, looks like you have your hand up also. We can go ahead and take your question now if you're ready.
Hello?
Hi, we can hear you.
Hi. I did ask a question. I don't know if I missed it. I was at Dollar General trying to get a charger. I'm in the car. What happens if we want to keep the kids home and then it doesn't work and want to send them to school? How does that work?
Yep, we would give you a week or two grace period on that if you did want to change your mind. So there is a window that will work with you on that. We just don't want people switching back and forth all the time.
Okay, now is the online, like I know there's virtual and that's like the teacher part, and then the online, is that for younger grades or what grades is that for? I haven't even looked at the letter yet.
So the online portion, if you're going to do it virtually online, is through a third party. We have remote learning using our Teams, which it would be, you would use an iPad, log into Teams, and you would be a part of the classroom and learn from the same teacher that you would have normally been in if you were face-to-face. So that would be considered a face-to-face with your regular teacher. But the online is through a third, and it's 3rd through 12th grade. That would be the online version.
Okay, now does every kid get it? Because I have 4 kids in different, well, 2 are in 2 grades and 2 are in the other grade. Do they all get iPads, or how are we doing that this year? Because it was a little rough last year.
Yeah, so right now we have it so that every child is able to have an iPad for that.
Okay, and then if we do the virtual logging in, how does that work? Because I have 2 in 2nd grade, and how am I going to keep them on from 8 o'clock till 3 o'clock?
Well, we understand that that's going to be an issue, that it's going to be difficult to do. Again, they're recorded, and we're going to try to make sure that that's part of it. But a regular school day, so if they were in a regular school and during regular school day, it is from 8 to 3, or roughly that time. So that would be, we want to continue that same practice, that it's not different than it was. So that's different than it was previously in March, because that wasn't the way it was in March. But this is becoming new. This year is, we are in school from 8 to 3, and that is the premise no matter where you're at, virtual, remote learning, or face-to-face. So we want to make sure that that connection is there. We also understand that sometimes that's not going to happen. That's why they're recorded, so that you could go back to it as needed for that.
But are they going to be considered absent? How does that go with the virtual?
So with the remote, they have to log in, and so that's counted as attendance. So if they are logging into the classroom and they see their classroom, that's considered their part of attendance. If you have issues with internet or whatever else, we need to make sure that we get a note to the teacher or whatever else that we would prefer that not occur a lot, because it's no different than truancy or anything else that we have. If you're missing the lessons with your teacher all the time, then that's going to be an issue. The online version, that is, you have to get your work done within a period of time. So that's, it's
all scheduled
it's
out.
all scheduled out for you, and it's your pacing, your child's pacing to be able to get it done by the end of the semester.
And on the back side of that, as the school district, we can see what's being done. So we can say that, you're 3 weeks in and you only have 12% done, you're supposed to be at 30. That's when we'd be contacting you and say, hey, I don't know what's going on, but your child's about 18% behind where they should be. You need to, pick up that pace, that kind of thing.
Now,
Okay?
what about the working parents that work from 8 till 5? And if it's online for just 3rd grade through 12th and you have a 2nd grader, how are you guys going to work that out?
Well, remember, if you're online, you're recorded. So you would be watching the recording when you got home from work.
Right.
You would be going through those recordings with your packet of information with your child in the evening.
Okay, so if we work from 8 till 5 and we want to keep the kids home due to the COVID, we are okay to go back online and watch the recordings without the kids being penalized, correct?
Well, correct. We would, and we would like them to log in to make sure that they're part of it, but we understand that it's not going to happen every single time. So we want to make sure that at some point in time that they are logged in and that they make contact with the teacher. That live version allows them to talk to their teacher and ask questions. So it's important for them to be in that if you're choosing that remote line.
Okay, and that's understandable. And I know like a lot of parents, they do, parents work, 8 till 5, and they're not comfortable with sending their kids. I mean, working in a hospital, we know this is the new normal right now. So we just want to make sure, the kids aren't going to get penalized for us working and providing for our family.
We just want to make sure that you have the materials that you have. So that's why we're recording them, so you have them when you can work on them at the time. Again, it's beneficial for those kids to have access to their teacher. So that is one good way for them to be there if they're logged on. If it can't happen, then we just need to make sure that contact is being made with the teacher as much as possible, and the homework is getting back and forth.
Okay, thank you.
Contact we primarily through email.
Right.
What are we doing?
That one.
Okay, what's the next one?
There's
Buses. As I mentioned, there's 2 areas that are mandatory mask. 612 is mandatory mask, and then all school buses, when you get on the school bus, you have to have a mask. get on the school bus. You'll also have to, put some sanitizer on your hands and go to your seat. Again, we'll try to do the best we can, but obviously if we try to do 6 foot social distance on a bus, we'd have about 10 kids on a bus. And so that's not feasible, but we have required that they wear a mask when they get on the bus, ride the bus, keep the mask on, get off the bus. They're probably gonna wear their mask down to their classroom, and then if they're in elementary, and then they might be able to take it off as obviously they're doing their breakfast and stuff. High school would just continue to wear their mask as they enter, 612 would. So busing is kind of a mandatory thing. Again, please understand, we'll do the best we can, but remember, we're driving 50 kids on a bus and we got one bus driver, and we're gonna do the best we can. We'll educate the kids on that keep your mask on, and when you're off the bus, you can take your mask off if you're in the elementary once you get into your classroom. High school, 612, I should say, junior high school have to keep it on.
The next one is about recess and lunch. For the elementary, lunch is in their classroom, so lunch will be brought to their classroom. They'll eat in their classroom, and a parapro will take them outside if weather permitting, or they'll stay in their classroom if the weather's not permitting. They will be separated from, so if both second grade have lunch at the same time, the second grade classrooms won't mix. So one parapro will take them to a different section of the playground so that they stay away from each other. And kind of go through that. We'll try to minimize the amount of time people on equipment with it, and try to make sure that we can sanitize as much as we can. But we have a wide open grass field and things like that. So at this point in time, that's what we're going to try to use as much as possible.
And again, in the high school, the lunch, we'll only send a certain amount of kids at a time into the lunchroom so that we can keep them spaced apart. So we're sending about 2 classrooms at a time to go eat lunch, and they'll all rotate in and out so that we only have a small number of kids in the lunchroom at a time. Another question here from Amy: do kids need to wear face masks all day? Can they wear face shields? So 6 through 12, they do have to wear masks all day. They can also wear a face shield, but it does have to be a mask. So a face shield in itself would not meet the requirement. It does have to be a face mask, the covering, the cloth covering over the mouth. Let's do this. We have a hand up from iPhone 99553. Who's that? Go ahead and you can unmute and ask your question, please.
Yes. I am a grandmother to one of the kids. My daughter's out of town, so I'm doing this for her. Okay. If the child has a fever, if the child has a fever or a cough that's going on for several days, and you want them to stay home, are they able to do the remote learning when they're home at that time?
Yes.
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 Or no?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And then okay, thank you. And then one more question. The recorded classes for the kids that are going face-to-face at school, when they go home, if they still have questions about the curriculum of that day, they can go on and watch those recordings?
Correct. Yep. That's what they can go on to the Teams, log on to that lesson.
Okay.
And most of the elementary is going to separate theirs or label those, like this is math lesson 820 or something like that, so they know what day it is and what lesson it is. So they are, so they'll be able to, they're for everybody.
All right. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
I see Geraldine Kohler has her hand up.
I have a follow-up question to the bus question. I'm just wondering how students will be seated on the bus. I know that it doesn't allow for social distancing. I get that. Will they be seated by families? Will there be assigned seating, and then we'll try and put siblings together? Are there any plans for how kids will be seated on the bus?
That's what we would like to do, is if we could seat by family. That's what we're looking at, and as we're putting together the routes, is putting together a seat by family. Obviously, we always try to have elementary up front and high school in the back to try to section them out that way. But we'll try as best we can. I don't know, Geraldine, to be real honest with you, I know not all siblings get along. So I don't know what that's gonna cause. That may cause more problems than what we're solving, but we would like to try to sit in together as families. Obviously, if there's some kind of issue or, you know, brother who's in 7th grade doesn't want their 2nd grade sister to sit with them because they don't want the whatever mating or whatever they do, then obviously we would still see elementary in front and move our way. We always go youngest in front and move our way back. But yes, we're going to try to have families sit together. Again, we're trying to avoid arguments on the bus. So we hope people will understand that, and maybe parents can help us with that, that you may be seated with your sister and you're going to be okay with it this year. And that's what we're going to try to do.
I think we
Yeah, and it's been
already touched
yeah.
that one.
I don't know how to raise my hand. I have a quick question about the bus.
Okay?
Are you doing any kind of pre-screening?
We just,
We're asking the parents to do the screening
yes.
prior to them putting them on the bus. So if they have a fever of 100.4 or greater, or any of those symptoms, we're asking you to keep them home versus sending them on the bus. And
Both staff and students. Staff is doing a pre-screening. We're asking staff to pre-screen themselves. We're asking parents to pre-screen their students. It was a recommended recommended. It wasn't a requirement, and we kept with the recommended. Obviously, we know the feeling on that. Some parents would want their kids screened, and we know some parents would not want their kids screened. And we also know that COVID shows a lot of asymptomatic, where the kids have no symptoms. So we'll do the best we can on that. We're asking parents to help us with that by screening their kid in the morning. The buses will be sanitized after each run in the morning, and then after each night run, they'll be sanitized when they come back.
Okay, I'm just gonna hit this one quick. I think we answered this one already. If a student teacher becomes infected with COVID, how will we handle it? We'll work with the local health department. We will, obviously those people will have to be quarantined, and we'll let the people know who were in direct contact with those people that they were exposed, and then they'll have to be quarantined as well. So like I said, I think we touched on that one, but I just wanted to hit that one.
And the documents are on the website for that, for the process.
breakfast, it's from Angie. How will breakfast work for our kids in the elementary? It will, again, it's we're asking parents to make sure they let us know that their child can have breakfast. And then they're going to choose what their breakfast item is. And so hopefully we'll have that menu out to parents and whatever else, so they can choose and say, this is what my child will, but they'll, same as lunch, everything will be in the classroom for us. I don't know about high school though, for breakfast.
High school, we don't have too many high school kids that eat, but yeah, with the space that we have, with the few high school students that do eat breakfast, we would be able to space them apart within the lunchroom. We have another question here from Amy. It says, will junior high kids move to different classrooms? I think I did touch on that one earlier as well. Yes, they will be moving to different classrooms again, because sometimes high school kids need to move and we need to clear out that classroom. So yeah, they'll be moving as usual.
Jeremy, just hold on a second. Just going back to that breakfast one, we want to make sure that we will have students come to the gym like we normally do. We will not have a morning assembly, so we will socially distance inside the gym until 7:45, and then at 7:45, students will be taken to their classroom where they will have breakfast in their classroom there. So just to make sure that you understood that that's the process there as well. Okay, sorry about that.
And another question from Angie here. It says, what needs to happen for restrictions to be reduced? Phase 5, the answer is yes. If we were moved to phase 5, then that relaxes a lot of the restrictions. And in phase 5, we could go back to mostly normal operations. We wouldn't have to stagger the lunches. We wouldn't be doing masks. Those things would be optional. It would be optional. Yes, again, that would be an optional thing. Will the school be providing the face masks? We do have face masks. If students do not have their own, I don't know, Mr. Kendall, how many you have?
We have about 800. We're not going to be handing out. We're going to be there. The teachers will have some if kids forget them. We have paper masks on the bus. or asking you if you could have your own face mask. Because once a face mask is given out, obviously we're not collecting it back. But we don't have enough for every single, and I don't know how parents are going to choose their face mask. Some parents may want 3 or 4 face masks or 5, one each day as they clean them. That'll be up to the parent to do that. But we'll have each teacher will have some face masks. If kids forget them, obviously that kind of stuff is happening. But we do have face masks if those kids forget them. But we would ask you, because we don't know what every parent wants. Some may want a face mask, a different face mask every day while they clean that face mask each day.
Okay. From Valerie, just how will parents be notified? Letter, calls, email? Normally we send out we can send out a email through Skyward if we're sending out any information. I'm not specifically sure what you're asking to be notified about, but if we were going to send any information, elementary sometimes sends a letter home with a newsletter all the time. If it's about a child or something like that, or if it's to let parents know about, say, a case or a COVID, whatever else, then that would go out through everybody. But usually we send out a Sky Alert or a Sky Message from Skyward that way as well.
Okay, we have another question here. Is Tech Center still available for 11th to 12th graders? Yes, Tech Center will still be available. We plan to send the juniors and seniors over there. They will, of course, there'll still be the requirements of masks and things over there at the Tech Center as well, but those programs will still be open. Let's get Angela. She has her hand up. Angela, if you want to go ahead and unmute.
One moment. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my question was, I'm a parent that works at a factory and I get out at 3, and I usually pick my kids up after school. They used to sit in Mrs. Engler's old classroom. How do I pick them up after school now? Do I need to call the school and say I'm outside and the kids come to the vehicle? Or am I to enter the school? How does that work now?
Well, and that's one of the things that we're kind of working on is probably a staggered dismissal, because we can't have the pickup room like we had before. So what we're going to try to do is to make sure that you go through the line there, and we're going to bring the kids out to that. If you're parked, kind of you can come up to them. If it's raining out, whatever else, we're going to kind of watch and then take them out through those things. But that is one thing we don't want parents to come inside and then we have a whole congestion of it. So we will have a parapro that is going to be leading kids out and looking for the parent to either come. So you don't necessarily have to get out of your vehicle there, and you can park in the parking place and go from there. But we will have to have I'm working on a staggered one because, we probably had 50 kids pick up in that pickup room and within a minute, within 15 minutes, we had all 50 picked up. So we have to work out some kind of a staggered so they can go out and find you with that parapro.
Okay. My other question was, on the first day of school, if the parent and the children are wearing masks, are we allowed to take them to their classrooms and get them situated like we used to? Like we did an open house, but are we allowed to come in at all, I guess is my question.
Now, what I will do is I will have, and especially for those young children, most of them will get, especially kindergarten and first grade for sure, they will have usually the teachers will send some kind of, like I'm Mrs. Plester's class or Mrs. Engler's class or Mrs. Ogurski's class, that you would pin onto them so we would know where they would go as well. But we will also, so a parapro will be meeting those students if it's a drop off, they'll be meeting them there. If they get off the bus, there'll be a parapro there that will get them to the classroom from that way.
Okay. What was my other question? Oh, with the lunches, you were saying they're going to be delivered to the classrooms now?
Yes.
Now, how do you take the children's order then? Because there's usually a first choice and a second choice, or there's a cold lunch, but it needs to get heated up. I mean, how does that work now?
So that is one of the things that we talked about at our teachers meeting this past week. It's just trying to figure out, like they would, come in the morning and the kids, you should have a menu at home. You'll be sent a menu from home and the kids would have to say that morning, I want first choice, second choice, or third choice. And then usually the teacher has some kind of a magnetic thing that shows it that way. And so then when the lunch comes in, they can look and oversee and say, okay, Johnny has the cheeseburger, somebody has grilled cheese, whatever else. And that's how they would deliver it. That's in the best case scenario, and we'll see what happens when the first day happens. But we're other schools have done that before, where they already had to choose their selection beforehand in the morning, and kind of go that way.
And that slip then would go down to the lunch people, and our lunch people then would make it for that class based on the choices that are on the slip.
Right.
And we bring food back down to the kids, pass out the food that they selected, and they would eat their food at their desk.
And students would still be able to bring their own lunch, but they would not be able to share their lunch. They just have to make one. They're not supposed to share lunch anyway, but
Yes.
and they could get their lunch anyway. So if they brought cold lunch, they could do that as well.
Okay. That might be all the questions I have at the moment. Thank you.
Okay. I think we answered Kay Genesis that same question about new students going to without open. The other thing with open house is our teachers might possibly, because if we have something, they might set up a Zoom with new parents. They'll try to get a hold of you to say, and then so that they can introduce themselves to that. So we might be able to do something like that as well.
This question we might have answered, or it's been asked, I think, a couple times. We will not be taking temperatures of students. We're asking the parents to monitor their child at home and take their student's temperature. We are not going to be taking that at the door or getting on the bus. It was not a requirement by the state. It was a guideline. We chose to have the parents take that. We know that there's a lot of asymptomatic COVID. Also, we know that some parents would not want us to take their temperature, and we didn't want to get into the debate of taking temperatures. So we're asking you to do that as a parent.
Okay, Amy is asking, can we get a list of school supplies that the kids will need? So on our website, each teacher or each grade level has a class list already set up on there. So if you look on that website, you should be able to find according to the grade level that's there. My only recommendation is if there are gym shoes on it, that you really don't need new gym shoes at this point in time, because we are not having gym on the gym floors. So.
I can't even read some of those questions.
I think
we did cover that one. Well, yeah, and one-on-one for distance learning. So like for the remote learning, there is a way through Teams that that the teacher can set up almost like a breakout session where they can just go one-on-one, or a couple of kids on one. They are in the process, again, that's in the process of our teachers learning. So this is somewhat new, especially for the elementary, maybe not so much for the high school, but our elementary are really working hard on that, and that is one of the options that they will be able to have. It may not be available right at the very beginning, but they are working to get that available so that they can do one-on-one or small group instruction with those remote learners.
Okay.
And we answered that one too as well. No,
that we just
Angela's,
started.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, the locker room part for students, obviously they'd have to have their mask on, and they would still have gym class if they're changing their clothes. We're still going to conduct gym class. I will tell you, gym class will be outside as much as possible. We want kids to get fresh air. We know by the research with COVID that kids outside and getting as much fresh air. So they will have a locker. They would still have to have their mask, and we would treat it just as if they were going to a class. They would just be in a locker room with our teachers in there.
You got that one already too, right?
Yeah, that's the same thing. Yeah.
What is the question?
I guess Lisa Chinaski asked, what will be the criteria for days missed absent from school, specifically if we choose to send our kids to school for in-person learning? I guess I'm not exactly sure what she means by that criteria for days missed. I'm assuming, and if you wanted to unmute and correct me if I'm wrong, Lisa, but I'm assuming you're talking about the maximum number of days that you can miss, you know, like a maximum number of absences. Obviously this year it's going to be a little bit different. We know with COVID, there may be days that students will have to be staying home, you know, for a fever or whatever the case may be. So we would relax those attendance requirements this year. Again, if I'm not answering the question that you asked, please feel free to correct me. But I think that's what you're asking with that question there. Do we answer that one?
Latchkey is going to be.
Yeah, Latchkey will be available at its normal time, 6:30 to 7:30, 3 to 6 after school. If we go to phase 3, we'll try to figure out a program to have Latchkey open as much as possible, because we do know that parents have to work and that kind of stuff. So we're working on what Latchkey would look like in phase 3. But we would try to have it open as much as possible for parents that got a little work. But it'd be normal times that we have in the school year, 6:30 to 7:30 in the morning, 3 to 6 at night.
Carrie is asking about kids with an IEP. How will that work this year? If they're in person, then it'll work just like normal. The special ed teacher will work with them, set up a schedule to be able to work with them either inclusion-wise within their classroom, and if they have to be pulled into the resource room, then they would also work with that as far as making sure it's clean, and they would not mix classrooms together. So they would just take the children this. That creates a difficulty with their schedules, but that's what they're going to do there. If it's distance learning and with that, then the same thing was going to apply. They'll have to, the special ed teacher will have to still work on trying to make sure that they work with that student through their time and set that schedule up with that through Teams and through that live video conferencing.
Just a quick thing on Latchkey. All masks will be required in Latchkey for all students. What's the next question?
So we have a question here. If a child gets sick with COVID and required to be away for 14 days, yes, that student, we would have them log in live to Teams and or watch videos that are posted by their teachers. We wouldn't want to switch them to an online class. We would want to keep them in the class that they're in and just continue to work, again, as a distance learner. Kids that are allergic to hand sanitizer, they'll have to be washing their hands.
So soap and water.
Yeah, soap and water.
We don't have any of, just so we have name brand hand sanitizer. We don't have any of the, I don't know, the recall, the ones that people made with alcohol or whatever they did. We have all name brands like Prel and what's the other one? What's the one over there? Germex.
Yeah.
We have all name brand hand sanitizer. We didn't go down the made ones, the alcohol ones. We didn't go down that road. So,
Here's your next question.
I'm assuming.
yes, TAP bus is going to have similar guidelines, masks, same guidelines basically as what's in the school. From my understanding, they'll follow guidelines. They'll be in the same situation though with social distancing. They won't be able to cover the social distancing rules, but they'll still have the mask and sanitizer.
Yeah, if they are showing any signs and you choose to keep your child home, they would just log on like they normally would for distance learning. Yeah.
We answered that one. That was a long time ago.
Right.
We're trying to get through some of these messages. Some of them might be older that we've already answered, but we're trying to. Yeah, the cooler temperatures is always a problem in Michigan. Obviously, if it's 45 degrees out in the morning, and we won't be able to have the bus windows open, and we'll have to use some common sense by our bus drivers those days, like in the September when we start school. Yes, we could probably open the windows and get as much fresh air, and as it gets colder, it'll be the same with the classrooms. We got to make sure that the kids are warm. So we'll have to use some common sense on that with fresh air.
That would be, the neck gaiters would be something.
What are neck gaiters?
They're just like you wear the whole around the neck and then you pull it up. So it's like a.
Oh,
put it over your head.
yeah. You know, as long as it's a mask covering your nose and mouth, I don't think we're going to get into a big debate about
what it looks like.
What it looks like and what it is. I mean, obviously, you know, we would tell everybody be appropriate with the mask that you're wearing. You can't have, you know.
I guess just maybe just to clarify Angie's question about neck gaiters, would they be allowed? And we're not going to, you know, fight about what kind of a mask that you're wearing. We just want you to wear a mask.
A cloth face covering.
Cloth face
Yeah,
covering.
we want something over your face, mouth and nose, please.
I think Mr. O'Neill is going to allow access to Skyward either sometime this week, and our teachers are getting ready to send out their letters to staff. So by Friday, I should have things posted. I think NAB, you have a question?
By Friday.
Yeah, by Friday.
I believe Mr. Warner can answer that question. I think the high school will be able to look at their class schedule. Is that correct, Mr. Warner?
Yeah, we should have those schedules out.
So the schedule should be out. They can log into Skyward, look at their schedule, talk to, or send an email to Mrs. Randall for about class changes.
Okay, so can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So all the children are going to be wearing masks now. I have 2 young girls. Are you guys going to do anything to up security measures to make sure nobody gets snagged? Because right now, obviously, sex trafficking is huge in social talk and, you know, just all these conspiracy theories, and it's scary. I don't want my kids getting snatched one day from school. So how are you going to make sure that our children are not being stolen since they have to wear these masks? You can't really identify one child from another with their face covered.
Annie, are you saying something to the effect like if you were supposed to pick them up and somebody else picks them up, they still cannot go with it. They still can't go with anybody but their parents or whoever is on their list. So we won't be able to do that. So we're not going to release them. So if it's at the end of the day dismissal and they're going out the doorway, the parapro is not going to release them to anybody that child does not recognize as their parent or guardian or whoever it would be that they would be.
Okay, all right. That's basically it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. See your next question there.
Our bus drivers are required to wear masks. Yes. Yes, bus drivers will have, you know, a paper mask on. You know, obviously we got to make sure that they're safe, or some sort of mask, I should say. Obviously we got to make sure they're safe. Is the mask required? Can a plastic shield be in place?
Would that become a safety issue for the driving?
Yeah, we'll take a look at that. Maybe, I don't know about the plastic shield. That might be something we are allowed. I haven't looked at that. We'll take a look at that. Remember I said there's might be some questions that we have to get back. I'll have to see if we're allowed by the Michigan State Police to put a shield up. But the shield still doesn't stop the breath. Otherwise, we would allow students to wear a face shield, which we can't allow. Yeah, I don't know. The plastic shields, I don't know if that would be allowed because it wouldn't stop their breath or the droplets from potentially moving to the back. I'll have to check on that with the face shield. That I don't know. Latchkey's available, yeah.
Alexander Smith asked, my child has an IEP for speech and OT. If he has to stay home because of symptoms, would he at least have speech be available online?
And I believe that I think that they're going to have to work something out. It depends on, so if he has symptoms and it's for a long stretch of time, his speech teacher would be making contact with you and setting something up like that, just to make sure that he doesn't miss any of his lessons. So that is something that's required by the IEP.
All right. We have a question here from Jeremy Parker. Will there be social distancing in the classes? Again, That's going to be as much as possible. Some of our classrooms will allow us to get students 5-6 feet apart. Some of them won't, just because there's not enough space. So we will do the best we can with social distancing with the students that we have in the classroom. We have a question here from Angie about band. So band will still happen as a class. Without the high school football season, there's probably not going to be any marching band this year. And with restrictions on indoor limits of crowd, there probably won't be much in the way of concerts this year either. However, Mrs. Nickel has actually done a lot of background research and trying to figure out how she can still keep band interesting and fun, and how the kids can still play instruments with the least amount of risk as possible. She's talked about using new instruments that they have not used before, more percussion, more strings, and less of the wind and brass type instruments to lessen the amount of air being blown around. So yes, we still will have band. It will look different this year, but Mrs. Nickel is being very creative and trying to keep that as interesting and fun for those kids as possible. And she's doing a pretty good job with that. Of course, she'll probably tweak how she does that throughout the year, but she does have several ideas to keep band going.
Kids go outside to play and they play on the play sets. How we're going to control the spread of germs. What we're going to try to do is not have them play on the play sets as much as possible. It's kind of a not as the best solution for the kids, but there is multiple grassy areas that we will have them spread out on for right now. And as we get more information about what we can do that we can quickly clean them, then it's possible that we can choose like this grade, this class can play on the play set today, but then the next day it'd be a different classroom, so that there's not there's opportunity for them to play on it, but it won't be every single day. 7:30.
We usually try to do that around about 7:20. 7. Yeah, we usually try to do the opening of school right around 7:20, 7:30. Obviously, you know, where people are starting to come in as adults at that time. You know, 7 o'clock is pretty tough, which is an hour before school. So we're looking at that, you know, 7:20, 7:30, drop your kid off. That's a little bit why we have latchkey at 6:30. If you need to drop them off earlier, you could drop them off at latchkey, and then they can catch the bus over to the high school elementary.
Okay, and there's still some questions, probably some people that logged on a little bit late and didn't hear some of the earlier questions. Again, lessons will be posted, so if you are a person who works 8 to 3, you still will be able to go ahead and view those videos at any time. So again, if you're an 8 to 3 worker, you can't be at home with your students while they are trying to log in live. Those lessons will be posted, and you can view those at a later time at your convenience. So we do have those options out there for you.
So that first one about if you're new to Ubly, the teachers will be sending you a letter, your children a letter, telling them who they are and introducing them to. We'll also have that posted on our elementary doors come Monday. And then
bus times will be part of that. Cindy does that.
Yeah, and bus things and stuff like that. She'll also be part of that. So Cindy will also be sending out what time the bus will come and what time you should be looking for it. And don't bus drivers usually call? Bus drivers usually call you to let you know, like, look for us around this time, you know, and then as they get better at the routes, that might change a little bit.
Yeah, the first week of school, you know, they want to keep a 10, 15 minute, look for us between 7 and 7:15 to pick you up. So they got a little bit of leeway in there. And then as Mrs. O'Connor mentioned, as things get refined, that time will get like, you know, 7:10, we're at your place.
And Mrs. Nickel did post, I didn't know she was even on here with us. She did put her email out there, jnickel@ublyschools.org. She said if you would like to know what band looks like, please send her an email, and We're gonna unmute.
How do you get the chat back?
Okay. I don't know what happened there.
Can everybody hear us? Thumbs up? All right.
Yeah.
And we lost all our chat.
Yeah, we did.
If
Yeah,
student
that's
does
the
an
same
online option, can they go to tech center? Yes, I believe if they did online in the morning, their tech center in their afternoon. Again, tech center kids are transported by bus morning and afternoon. They'd have to wear a mask to come on and get on the bus and take that to tech center and then wear a mask on the way back home.
Okay. And whatever little glitch we just had there, wiped out the chat. So at this point, if there are any more questions, you can go ahead and unmute and ask if there's something that we haven't answered yet. If there's still something that, like I said, that we haven't covered yet, please go ahead, ask it, or you can go ahead and put it in the chat too. But we did lose the chat, whatever was in there, so you'll have to.
There was a thing with a full-time nurse. Yeah, so the full-time nurse, we are currently in the process of interviewing for a nurse, and it probably will be for most of the day. So either like 9 to 3 or 8 to 2 or something like that. So we're hoping to get a full-time one at the start.
Our chemicals are all biodegradable and they're not harsh chemicals. They're approved by EPA and those type for spraying on the desk. Playground is still being determined. Same with bus seats, those type of things that we wipe down. It's basically what we use every single day in cleaning our school.
It's a peroxide solution.
Yeah, it's a peroxide type solution that will clean those classroom desks, bus seats, playground if it comes to that. So very safe. We know that it is a very effective cleaning agent for the virus.
Okay, we have Angela with her, looks like she has a question.
Yes, I was wondering, when will we know who our teachers are for the children?
So this week, the teachers are working to send out letters to your stuff, and it'll be posted on Monday for at the elementary door, and you will also be able to log on if you have access to Skyward for your children. You'll be able to get into Skyward for that as well. So right now that's closed, but Mr. O'Neill will be opening that up for you, and our teachers are working to send out letters this week, so you'll be able to get that.
I'm not sure if I have Skyward. How would I log into that?
Yeah, you'd have to contact Tony O'Neill at toneil@ublyschools.org, and he will get you set up with a password, a temporary password to get you to log in.
Okay.
If not, just email me and I can forward that email. So if you email the elementary principal, Yvonne O'Connor, I can forward that to him.
Okay, and my other question was, do you anticipate us having a Christmas program this year?
Too early to say.
It's too early to say for that one. If we've been talking about possibly doing something more virtually than anything, having kids do something in their classrooms like that, but
Right now
it's not something.
We wouldn't meet the requirement right now
Right.
of the state.
Okay.
Way too many people, but things change. That's not till December.
Right, so we're hopeful that we'll have something, but nothing's scheduled at this point because we want to make sure we don't have the capacity, we can't do the capacity.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we got that question.
What happens when you get to phase 5?
Right here.
Well, if restrictions are lifted, don't they have to finish that virtual class online? If it's online virtual and you're asking about if restrictions are lifted, I think you have to finish your online course to the end of the semester.
Yeah, if it's a computer-based program, you'd have to finish that. If you're just logging in with the teachers, you just come back to school.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Angie asked, what happens when we get to phase 5, just back to normal or a whole new process? Again, a lot of their requirements would be lifted.
It'd be a recommendation.
It would be more recommended instead of required. it would get much more close to normal if we were in phase 5. In phase 6, which is basically there's no cases in the area, that would be basically back to normal. So if we do get to phase 5, a lot less restrictions. Again, it would look a lot more like normal. There's a lot of things that change there. Mask wearing wouldn't be required anymore, those types of things. So that would be phase 5.
We answered that one.
That?
We answered the Christmas program.
Elementary sports work this year.
Well, currently, if elementary sports, if they don't have high school sports, we won't have elementary sports as well.
Elementary sports, basketball, football is not ran through the school. That's a separate program, so that's not our decision. That would be their decision. Basketball and those that are run through the school, we make the same decisions as what we make when we're with high school students, girls and boys basketball, those type of things, volleyball. If we're not allowed to play them, we wouldn't be able to have elementary. And that's the sports that Ubly runs.
I think you already talked to that.
Yeah.
One. Okay. The elementary designated quarantine area is in our nurses station at this point in time, and the high school would be.
Yeah, same thing. There has always been a designated, I don't know if we call it sick room, detention room, whatever you want to call it. But there is a designated area that we can close off and put the student in there. Have them lay on the cot, that sort of thing. So yes, we do have those areas on both ends of the building.
Yeah, bathrooms cleaned thoroughly. Yes, each day they're required to clean every 4 hours. So every 4 hours we'll be going through, and as Mr. Warner had mentioned, we'd be wiping locker handles and door handles and all those type of things. Bathrooms themselves, we would start the day, they're clean when we start the day, probably by noon, we'd be going back around and starting to clean all those bathrooms again and wiping them down, especially the areas where there's a lot of traffic with kids touching stuff, hand dryers and whatnot. Yeah, you'd have to have a medically exempt, you'd have to have a doctor's slip. You'd have to have a slip for a no mask.
Yeah.
How do you keep them socially distanced then? Because they're not wearing a mask.
On those situations, like I said, we probably would do the best we can. We have not shrank our class sizes down to the 6 foot apart because it's not feasible or possible in our district. I don't know if that answers that question.
From Amber, yeah.
From Amber, I don't know how, we would do the best we could.
And we would encourage them to stay 6 feet apart
yes.
or as far as they can away from people that, so that because they don't have a mask on.
That's a good question. Let us look at that, further too. Trying to figure some of that out, but, we do the very best and trying to meet that standard.
Amber, I see you unmuted. Did you have a question for that?
I was just going to follow up with saying, I will have my daughter wear a mask, but if somebody doesn't have to wear one because they're medically exempt, I just wondered how that was handled.
Yes. Well, again, in class, nobody's required. We're encouraging everyone to wear a mask. There's a couple good videos out there of what masks do and how they help from the research that we've looked at. And so we would ask that, everyone try to send your kid with a mask. But if you're medically exempt, we would do the best we can. And obviously everybody would have the choice to wear a mask in everyone's classroom.
Can I ask a few questions while I'm unmuted?
Yeah.
Okay, so for older siblings with younger siblings, I know a few families that are in a similar situation as mine. So if my daughter tests positive for COVID, does my son still get to go to school?
That would probably go through the health department. That's a very good question. My assumption, just because I have a person that's close to me that's tested positive, all of her children have to test as well. And that's the requirement. Now, that's not our county, that's Oakland County, but I would assume And like I said, I'm not an expert in this, but I would assume that your child would have to be tested if you're in location of your child that tested positive. So I don't know that. You know, that would give us time. If anybody tested and came into the school, we would shut down at least for a day, get guidance, clean the school, and then follow the guidance of the health department. And that would obviously be one question that we would address, that if a child of a sibling, does they have to stay home while they get tested for the 10-day? I think it's a 10-day period now with the CDC guidelines. I think it's now 10 days.
Rebecca came down with it 14 days later.
So just to expand that further, not even saying my children, what happens if somebody within the home, like myself, what if I test positive? Can my kids, if they're asymptomatic, are they allowed in the school?
And I think, again, if you contact us, again, it goes to, we'll go to the health department. The health department will give us the guidance of it. If we look at the process for COVID case at school online, it does say that school district will notify those close contacts, and they would be notified that they be placed in a 10-day quarantine based on their last exposure. So if you had it and you were positive and your kids were right with you all the time, I'm assuming that that's what they would do. But we would go through the health department first and find out what they say, and they would give you guidance for that as well.
Okay. So for indoor gym class, are kids wearing masks during activity?
There is no indoor gym at my side anyway.
Right, and that's, so they will be outside as much as possible, and even if, when the weather does get cooler, we're gonna be telling kids to bring sweatshirts, sweatpants. We're gonna go outside, even if it is cooler weather. So we're going to go outside as much as possible. If and when we are forced inside, then that will be less activity, staying apart within the gym, things like that. So it's probably not going to be physical education as normal. It's going to be modified to keep kids apart and not get up to those high levels of breathing and things like that, so that, you know, the mask isn't going to hinder their breathing. So it'll be reduced activity, unfortunately.
And I think on the elementary side, if they're held inside, they might do more of a health lesson type thing, as far as still, instead of physical activity, they would do something more of a health lesson to support them that way. So.
Amber?
Yeah.
I'm looking at the process for COVID-19 exposure at school. If you look at that, it's how to handle symptoms and household exposures, number 3. Are they a high school member in close contact of a person with symptoms or pending COVID-19 test? It says yes. Household members, classmates, and other close contact of symptomatic but undiagnosed person or quarantined person may continue to attend school and should monitor for symptoms. They not need to be excluded. If symptoms develop, they should call the medical provider to be tested for COVID-19. Now, this information, so you guys know, is not public schools. This is coming from our health department. So I hope that answers your question. For anybody that has those kind of questions, it is pretty detailed on how that's all laid out, and you can go online and grab that at our website. But I think that maybe answered your question, Amber.
And I had that printed out. I just wasn't sure if that was specific to our school or if that was recommendations that we were going. I wasn't sure if that was.
Oh, we're going to follow the health department recommendation.
And the difference between that is number 2 and number 3 is that if you were only exposed to it, then they can come back to school. But if you test positive for it, then they have to be quarantined.
Yeah, the key is exposure. Yeah.
Okay. So then will breaks be extended to the older kids who have to wear a mask all the time at school, where they can step outside and take it off for a few minutes?
Well, and that will be, of course, there will be times where, say lunchtime, there will be an area where they can go outside, and yes, then they can take their mask off, especially, you know, after they're done eating their lunch, if they want to head out, get a little bit of fresh air, take their mask off. Yes, absolutely, we'll do that as much as we can. And even in the case where it might be winter and cold outside, if the kid says, I want to put my coat on and go outside and get a little bit of fresh air, I'm going to let them do that so that they can go ahead and go outside and get a few minutes of fresh air and take the mask off. So yeah, we'll work with kids on that. Because I know it's gonna be, it'll be tough for kids to wear a mask all day, for sure.
Okay. Did we put in air conditioning throughout the school with our bond?
Yes.
And that's working?
Yes.
Yes.
And that does circulate fresh air 3 times per day through the rooms. So there is a circulation that goes through that brings in fresh air and sucks out the other air. So that'll support that too. Anything else, Amber?
I'm just curious with Jason, with him having it.
What else do we have?
I think we're all set for questions right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Angie, again, if you don't have a parent sign up for Skyward, just either email elementary principal or high school principal, and we'll get you set up.
Elementary football, I think we answered that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you can see people that have their hand raised or not, because you can. Okay, my participant list vanished when we had the little glitch, so I wasn't sure. I have just a kind of a question / comment about who needs to self-quarantine and who doesn't. The most, and guidance is ever changing, as you know, the most recent health screening from the health department says that if in the last 14 days, their employees have had close contact with someone that is positive for COVID, that they stay home and contact their physician if they've had that close contact. So it might be worthy of us working really closely with the health department should someone's family member have a positive COVID test.
Correct.
Yeah, the health department, we would hope that, obviously parents and, you would be contacting us, and that would be, for us to get information so we know what's going on, because obviously it's all of our jobs as a community to try to keep everybody safe as much as possible.
Can I piggyback, Geraldine? So another concern that I was having is that there are so many of us as parents and spouses of staff who work in other schools. I mean, I know for sure you've got Bad Axe, Harbor Beach, Caseville, and North Huron, whose kids are in Ubly, but the parents are in those other schools. So we really need to know, and I'm a K-12 exposed teacher in Caseville. So if it's in Caseville, I'm gonna definitely be exposed. So then what happens with my family?
It would go back again to that same system of contacting the health department and determining your close contact, whether it's necessary for you to have to pull your children, and then the same way. So we have to start there first, and then determine that based on exposure, type of exposure, symptoms, and things like that.
Yeah, it just is a big concern. Yeah, we've got so many people all over the county in close contact. It's not just the Ubly community.
Right.
So,
yeah.
We all have to work together on that one.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'll be letting you know as soon as I know anything. You feel like it's bound to happen, but.
Yeah, so this is, a question that I still have, because it feels like we have pieces of information that are different and conflicting maybe, and things are changing. Sometimes they change by the day. So that might be something for us to look into, so we can communicate to all families on, and it could change from now to September 8th. So on September 8th, what do we do then if a family member or we have a close contact?
Yeah, health department will automatically, from my understanding, contact anyone that tests positive, investigate the contacts for a 48-hour period. That's that whole contact tracing. So we know that's, we've talked to Ann Hefner about that. We know that will be in place. And that's for anybody, that's regardless of schools.
Yeah, right.
We have rapid testing in our area. I've never gotten tested, so I don't know. Where it would be a week before. I have a friend that tested in Lapeer County and he got his results a week later.
Yeah, I don't know, Kara. I don't know if we have the rapid testing. I know in some of the rapid testing, with everything you read, there's some false positives with that. So I don't know if we have that necessarily in Huron County.
I don't mean to overtake your meeting, but Ann, we just had a list of testing centers, and Ann just said, and Jeremy and Yvonne, you were on that call, that the results are coming back probably not as quick as we want, but it sounded like within 3 to 5 days right now.
That's pretty standard. That's the pretty standard area for results. What else do we have?
Yeah, Amanda here has a question. We did answer this one earlier, so I'll just hit it quick. If we begin the year face-to-face and we want to switch options, we would allow a couple week grace period that we would work with you on that. Or if things did change, if we've changed from like phase 4 to phase 5 and you wanted to switch, or vice versa, if there was a spike of cases in the area and you wanted to take your kid online, we would work with you on that. But again, what we don't want to get into is people continually switching back and forth and I want to be in school now I want to be at home. So we want to limit that as much as possible. We will work with people when things do change.
Is it very difficult to get an exemption letter?
She said that it
will
will be.
Oh,
That's just
okay.
the answer.
Non-contact extracurricular activities like robotics, what will they look like if they're still be allowed, if sports not allowed?
That's still to be determined.
Yeah, exactly. And those types of things we will have to work with on an individual basis. Obviously, there are a lot of different things with FFA and robotics and things that go on, especially in the high school level. My guess is those competitions are going to be difficult to run because I've been to robotics meets, I've been to FFA competitions, and there's usually a lot of people at those things, even just to run those. So that's probably going to come from those individuals like First Robotics and the FFA. They're probably going to let us know what they're going to do with those extracurricular activities. If they're allowed to run and the organization itself is going to run them, then we'll run them here at Ubly. But obviously if that organization shuts it down, then we'll follow suit as well.
In a non-educational setting, the max you can have right now with the latest executive order is 10. So we have more than 10 in pretty much all of our after-school activities. So we wouldn't be able to run that as a group of 10 or more right now.
Crystal says just how will PE work for distance learning students? And in the elementary, we're going to the teacher is going to say, hey, it's gym time. So if you're at home, go run outside or go do some jumping jacks or, things like that, because it's almost like a break for them to go do something else.
And they may do some exercise, usually the first 5-10 minutes of gym is stretches. They may be online doing all the stretches and doing all those type of things. Obviously, if they're teaching in some kind of game, that would be much more difficult. They could watch the other kids, but to participate in the games would be obviously much more difficult.
Kind of touched on this one.
Yeah.
How about face for those medically married? How about a face shield for a requirement? We don't have requirements for.
No, but what he's saying is if they have an exempt to wear a mask, can we require them to wear a face shield? That's what the question, I think that's what he's asking.
Okay. We don't, the face shield, I don't know, the research on face shields, why we didn't allow face shields over masks is that still droplets and breath still goes around the face shields. And they could wear it, but it wouldn't be a requirement. Is how I'm reading that. Is that right? You guys are reading it?
Well, what he's saying, yeah. So they can wear it, but
yeah, they can.
We can't require it.
No, can't require it. No.
She's gonna make sure, yeah.
So can we get a list of chemicals that are being used?
That are used for cleaning?
Yeah, we'd have to get that from maintenance, but yeah, we could have a list of those chemicals. Most of them are going to be like the hydrogen, the peroxide stuff, but we'll get a list of what we're using to wipe handles and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Just email me if you could, and then I can forward that email on, or we post it to the website. that's probably easier,
Yeah.
and everybody can see it.
And yeah, I think
Yeah, I think it's just, Paul, and if you start virtually schooling, they would need to finish it after that 2-week period. So we give you a 2-week period of grace period, but once that 2-week period is done and you're gonna stay with it, then you have to finish that online virtually for the rest of the semester.
Okay.
we have a few people here saying that Sure has rapid testing, so we'll pass that along. Will the kids who are distance learning, will they be able to participate in robotics? Yeah, if they are, if there's ways that you can do that, absolutely. So we are still considering those distance learners and those online learners, they are still Ubly students, and they are still allowed to participate in extracurricular activities. How exactly you want to go about that with what you're doing there, that'll have to be something that you work out between the person who's running that program. But yes, they would still be able to participate. They're still Ubly students. Okay, Amber asked, what if a student is COVID positive and very sick? How does time off makeup work look if they are sick, that they can't keep up with schoolwork? How will they be graded? So that we would have to go on a different individual basis. Yes, if a student is very sick, we would obviously work with you on that as far as getting caught back up and getting you the instruction to get you caught up. And it would depend on how, again, that individual situation were to work out. If the student was very sick, of course, if they were hospitalized and things like that, we would definitely work with them and get them back up to speed with the instruction. Probably not going to require all the work though, just because it would be a lot to ask of that student.
The nice thing about all that, with instruction is all recorded. So I just, instruction's all recorded. So a kid doesn't fall behind once they get healthy. They could spend literally June, July, and August looking through those instructional guidelines to get caught back up and looking what the instruction was. But Jeremy's right on the homework. We would obviously want to make sure the kid gets healthy first.
Right.
It looks like there are some videos posted to the MBE website with exercise and physical activities. Thanks for passing that along, Jeremy.
Yeah.
I think as of right now, we've caught up with most of the chat window stuff. Are there any other things out there?
Grades are taken as well.
Yeah, so even if you're distance learning or virtually or whatever else, grades are going to be part of the same. It's just like you're attending school
right
normally. So
Yep.
grades would be part of that.
Okay. Looks like Geraldine has something.
Yeah, I have a few questions, and it's okay to say you don't know and that you'll get back to me. Yvonne, you talked about having a staggered release time at the end of the day for elementary. Jeremy, are there any changes to arrival and dismissal for junior high and high school?
As of right now, their arrival is usually pretty well staggered anyways. Of course, either students are coming on the bus or they are leaving, they're coming on the bus or they're coming in with their own transportation. So that we won't change at all. As of right now, no plans for staggered dismissal, although that is something that that we may look into just a few minutes at a time, maybe releasing. I don't have a specific schedule on that at this moment.
One change in the busing. The busing will drop off at the front of the school on Union Street. We will not drop off in the back in the morning. So elementary will come in through the front door, and that'll leave less for our elementary to walk through the high school hallways. Because as you know, with the change of the bond issue, 5th grade and elementary start right as basically when you walk in the front door. So the elementary students would get off the bus and go right. Junior high, high school would go left, and they would go in by Mr. Sweeney's door on the other end. So we're going to kind of segregate the elementary away from the high school as much as possible in the morning, where we used to drop off behind the school back by the cafeteria. That's going to change since elementary students will be having breakfast in their classrooms anyways.
Thanks. And thanks for looking into whether you can do a staggered dismissal time at the end of the day for those older kids. I know what a logistical nightmare that would be, but I think it'd be really beneficial. Another question for junior high school. With the limitations on gatherings and assemblies, we won't be gathering like we used to. For now, at least, we won't be gathering like we used to. Where do the junior high and high school students report on the first day? I'm assuming they're not going to be going all into the big gym.
No, so that's where we would encourage our students and our parents to go ahead and look at their schedule in Skyward. Yes, we know it's not out quite yet. It will be out there soon though. But please go ahead and look at your schedule, find your teachers within Skyward and just go ahead and go to that first hour. And if students need help, of course, on that first day, we'll direct them as best we can where they need to go.
And just so you guys know, we'll probably, as a school district, send out an instant alert before that first day, reminding you to let your student know that we will be going, and I'm sure Jeremy will be sending an email to the students, reminding students to go to their first hour that's on their schedule in Skyward. And that'll help alleviate some of the crowding and kids trying to figure out where to go. Follow up on that, just many of the postings, anything that comes up, we will send through instant alert, post on our website, those types of things.
Thanks. As a follow-up to that, for the new junior high students, this is their first time switching classes. So it might be really helpful to have a map of where each teacher's classroom is labeled, not labeled by classroom, either number that corresponds to the Skyward schedule or the name that corresponds, so that parents can say, well, first hour, you're gonna go here. Now this is next to the library. And so they kind of know, just to alleviate some of that, first day jitters. It'd be helpful to have that.
Absolutely.
We got a question here from RJ. Blessing.
It's not gonna look any different other than the kids will wear masks and have to use Germex on the
Yeah,
bus.
mask and Germex on the bus. I mean, we'll still have our same number of routes, those type of things. But mask and Germex on the bus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, when you log into Skyward, you'll know who your students or who your children have or teachers, and you should be able to do that early part of next week. Go ahead and log into Skyward.
We're figuring out parent-teacher.
Yeah, parent-teacher conferences, we're still trying to figure out how to do it. Either we're gonna do a staggered time frame for parents to come in, or it could possibly be through Teams or Zoom or things like that. But we're just trying to get school started right now, so.
Yeah, and probably, I think all 8th graders do have gym first hour, so they would go ahead and report to the gymnasium. Again, we would space them out in there.
So Angie, elementary, we would have those starting, those that can't come early because the teachers are not in their classrooms until 7:45. We need to have them, those that come before that time period have to have someplace to go. So we are gonna socially distance them in the elementary gym on that first day and then take them to their classrooms. So any new students or kindergartens, those will probably go right to their classrooms. The parapros will take those to their classroom, but all 1st through 5th grade that come in early before 7:45 would go to the gym, and then we'll social distance them and then take them to their classroom. And Skyward, yes, is for elementary students as well. So if you need access, just email myself or Mr. Warner and we can get you set up.
Is that all, Lieutenant?
That's all we have right now. Any other questions out there?
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank
See
you.
soon.
Yeah.
And just so you guys know, I mean, anything with technology. So we've been talking about Microsoft Teams, and I think we may be the only district doing it in the county, maybe in Tri-County. Be patient with us. This is all a process new, just like we've talked about all the COVID stuff tonight. be patient with us. We're working through it as well. Our teachers are working through it. We're going to do the best we can do to make sure everything happens the way we are describing it tonight. But I will tell you, there will be a little bit of a learning curve for all of us. So we need your support as a community with our kids coming back, and with our teachers and aides and custodians and everybody. We're kind of all in this together, and we got to work through it together. And so I just ask that, be patient with us. We're going to have some glitches. We had a glitch tonight that kicked some people off of the chat. There's going to be some glitches, but I think once this is in place and refined, like I said, this is post-COVID. Once COVID's done, we're going to continue with this process. So I think it's an excellent opportunity for parents to, sit down with their kids at night and say, hey, what'd you learn? What was the instruction? You can pull it up and take a look at it yourself. So bear with us. We're kind of all in a new world, as they say, that we're going into, and we're trying to navigate through this ourselves.
And both Jeremy and I will try to make sure, Jeremy already has things out for his high school. For me on the elementary side, we need to help elementary parents be able to access and understand the Teams thing. So we will be putting out a video and sending that out to you as well, so that, and putting it on the website so that it's easier for you guys to manage it for elementary parents. So it is a work in process, but I think it'll be great for all of us in the long run.
Go ahead, John.
I think our motto this year is patience and grace.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
I do have a few more questions. I'm getting an echo though. Okay, it's gone. What changes are being made to the serving of lunches? Yvonne, you talked about how elementary is being served in the classrooms. For middle school and high school, what changes are being made to the serving of lunches?
Yeah, so that's where we are only sending a certain amount of kids at a time. Typically, it's going to be 2 classrooms, less than 50 students. We're going to go ahead and we're going to keep that line spaced out as they're coming in, and as they're going through. They will still go through as normal though. And when they sit in the cafeteria, of course, they will be spaced out, which is the purpose for only allowing so many at a time. So they'll have roughly 15 minutes in the cafeteria, which for most kids is more than enough time. I know as adults, we would think 15 minutes is not even close to enough time, but for the students, it really is more than enough time for them. Then they will move to another area. If it's nice, we want to get them outside so they get a little bit of fresh air. But when it gets too cold in the winter time, we'll probably move them to a gymnasium again, keep them separated while we're doing that. So that's going to be the change to lunch. That lunch time, depending on what classroom you're in, might start at 10:45, and you might not eat lunch. Another group might not eat lunch until 12:30 because we're going to have a long span of those. So that's what lunch is going to look like.
The lunch tables will also have a barrier down the middle on every lunch table. So there'll be a barrier from the person that's sitting across from you, and they'll be socially distanced, but there'll be a barrier, a glass barrier, a plexiglass barrier on each table as well.
Thank you. That was one of my questions. And I appreciate all your efforts to get the kids outside for some fresh air and a break. That's really good. In addition to the shields and the distancing in line and less students in the classroom, are we going to be able to get rid of the thumbprint scanner at the point of sale for the cafeteria so students don't need to touch the same thing?
We'll have to take a look at that. How else that'll have to be a question that I'll have to talk to Tony to see, Mr. O'Neill, our tech director, to see if there's a code that they can have, but you just have to punch that in. I don't know that, or if there's a scan that they can have on the back of their student ID maybe. I don't know. We'll have to look at that. I mean, obviously, if we have to use a thumb scan, we're gonna have to wipe it out every single time, and I don't know if that's gonna mess up the system. That's a good question. We'll have to take a look at that on the thumb scan in lunch.
And one more question about lunches, and I'm talking about middle school and high school. So I know that we're going to do less in the cafeteria to allow us to spread out. We've got a plastic shield in between, or barrier in between. Are students going to have assigned seats so we can do contact tracing, or they can just sit wherever they want as far away as possible?
No, I hadn't planned on doing any assigned seating. No, I hadn't planned on that.
I just asked because during lunch when we have our masks off and we're talking and we're eating and it's kind of a high contact time. So I didn't know if a person sitting next to a student ended up being positive, how we would help the health department do that contact tracing if we didn't have assigned seating. And last question about lunch is if a student brings their own lunch, are they allowed to just go outside right away to have their lunch? Junior high, high school. Like, will there be any tables or a tent or any space outside, or they can sit on the grass?
Yeah, we are looking at getting some picnic tables, which would be over by the old courtyard. We just had a game, you know, there might be 6 to 8 picnic tables that would be outside. Obviously, they would have to have somebody there that's going to supervise them, so they're not alone. But there would be some picnic tables by the old courtyard. It's the girls' new locker room. That just got paid, so there will be some picnic tables out there.
Okay.
Cassandra, for sanitizing classrooms in middle school and high school, they have to clean their desks and stuff like that every hour because they're switching every hour. In the elementary, they would sanitize the area there at least twice every 4 hours is the recommendation. Unless those students switch desks, and our elementary teachers are trying not to do that at all, so they wouldn't have to clean that, but they would do that at least twice within the daytime because it's every 4 hours that they would do that. Snack time is still available in the elementary. However, we'd have to figure out, we're not going to have like treats brought in or things like that to share. So it will be your own individual snack that you would bring in for the elementary. Teachers may have the crackers and milk like they did in kindergarten, but as far as a snack in first grade and so forth, they would have to bring their own in, but not to share. Yeah, no birthday treats or holiday treats at this point in time. We just can't have anything being brought in. Otherwise, yeah, it's kind of disappointing, but our teachers are trying very hard to make those days special for the student as far as they can, but we've opted not to go with treats for this year. Hopefully next year we can start over again. Not even prepackaged. Yeah, we're just not gonna, because if one offers one and then a parent can't, we just don't want to get into the, whether they bring in homemade or not homemade or whatever else. We just prefer not to have anything brought in.
Questions?
Any other questions?
Carolyn's.
I have a few more. So I totally get not having open house. I get your rationale on that. What kind of supports are planned to help these incoming 6th graders with finding their locker in their classes, etc.? Like, what are the plans for helping out those littler people?
Well, the 6th grade, of course, they have all their lockers upstairs. The plan for that is they're going to report to their first hour teacher, and those teachers will be right up there in the hallway with them. So they'll be able to go ahead and walk them through, help them out with some of those things that you're talking about as far as what's your next class and where are those other classrooms. The nice part about it is most of them are upstairs. So several of those classrooms will be within close proximity to their lockers. And that first day, obviously will allow them some grace of time moving and things like that. And those teachers will be helping out those students. I don't remember exactly what the numbers are in that class, but there's probably around 20 to 25 kids per classroom. So we'll put some time and effort into that first day for sure, and have those teachers helping out those kids and get them oriented out to where they need to be and finding their things.
Thanks. I do not want to start a mask, no mask debate by any means, believe me. I get that. I'm just wondering, and I'm sure you have thought about the school's plans for supporting mask use. Obviously we'll be modeling that as adults and it kind of all starts at home, but I didn't know if you've thought about how we can positively support the use of masks at this time while we're in phase 4. I'm sure you probably thought about it. I guess not really a question, just kind of a comment.
We will be going around as 3 administrators first day and talking with all classes about mask use and why we're using a mask and what the reason is for it. And we encourage that, we're encouraging kids obviously to wear a mask, but we want to tell them why. And, the whole idea of protecting you and protecting others at home and all those things. It's bigger than just yourself. And that's kind
And
of.
so hopefully we can go to school.
Yep.
Right.
And that's where our theme is. Okay.
Have you considered getting some hand washing stations to put around the building to alleviate the congestion in the bathrooms so that students can have opportunities for frequent hand washing without having to be congested in a bathroom?
Yeah, we're looking at, how we're going to do that. What we're going to put in, whether it's the little misters or we're going to have tables that will have hand sanitizer on at different locations throughout the school, like by our drinking fountains. Because I think we have 6 or 8 of those in the building. We may have just tables that have the hand sanitizer on for kids. Our kids are pretty good. They do a pretty good job of not having to worry too much about them messing around with it. They've always been good and Ubly for that. So that's probably what we're looking at, is maybe right around the drinking fountains. Have your hand sanitizer, go up, take a squirt of it, wipe your hands off, walk to your class. That's kind of what we're kind of looking at. Something like that around different parts of our schools, so kids don't have to necessarily go into the bathroom.
Angela, will elementary be allowed to have water bottles? Yes, we're recommending that their water bottles versus them using the water fountains. So we're going to recommend that. That might even be on the list, classroom lists. I think that was just a statement.
No. Are we anywhere doing anymore?
So,
Or we can just say they can always email questions if they have any more.
Is there any more questions?
We got one there on the lockers. So the lockers, again, what we're trying to do is we're trying to get 1 person per locker. Will they be used near the entrances? Most of the high school lockers actually are not by classrooms that are used anymore. Anything from 9th grade through 12th grade, really, there's not too many classrooms that are being used there. The junior high, the 7th and 8th grade would be the ones that would be close to. But again, the thing we're really trying to do is keep kids 1 per locker to spread kids out as much as possible. So we'll be sticking to try and get 1 person per locker as best we can.
Geraldine, your hands up yet?
Yeah, I have a couple more.
Okay.
So I'm not sure what the recommendation is on this, but I'm just wondering if we might need to look into it. Is it possible or recommended to get a fresh air return more than 3 times a day that we currently have? I don't even know what the recommendation is as far as fresh air return. That is the recommendation?
That is the recommendation. Yep.
Okay.
50% fresh air.
That is the recommendation. When actually, we had our whole unit, all of our heating units and air units replaced, and that is the guideline. 3 times per hour.
Okay. I know that we were able to crank ours up a little bit, so I don't know if you have that option or not.
The same. Right now it's about 20%. We'll turn it up as, obviously. The big question will always be in Michigan is as it gets colder, you're bringing in more colder air outside. And so, obviously in September, as long as it stays warm in October, we'll crank it up as much as we possibly can, knowing that within a month in Michigan or sometime sooner, we may have to crank it back down, but there will always be some outside air. It's about 20% is what it is now, 3 times a hour.
Okay. And I think what my last question is, so we all gave it our good faith effort when March came around and we were thrown this curveball. So everybody, staff, students, parents, we all did the best that we could. With the situation we were given while we were learning at home. What strategies are going to be implemented to help with that foregone learning? And I'm not saying that there's foregone learning because we did something wrong. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that we know that April, May, and June just wasn't the same as being in person. So what strategies are we going to take to try to address that?
You know, on the elementary, and we have to take that benchmark assessment anyway, so we would see where those kids are at, and then target those discrepancies. It also, I've talked to our teachers in the elementary that they may have to do layered learning. So like if you're teaching second grade, you may have to layer in some first grade learning that they didn't quite master because of that. And it's going to be a tough one for us too, but that first benchmark screening is going to be the thing that gives us our idea of where kids are actually at, and then we can determine our interventions and our processes from there.
I get that, and kind of like a tier 1.5 in the elementary, like I know that we have our work cut out for us there. I guess my question was more toward the middle school, high school, knowing that, well, that's where my kids are, but like what are we doing to address that foregone learning for those older kids?
And that would be a similar type process. So we already talked with the teachers last week about, you know, you're gonna have to start with where your learners are at. Do that pre-test, find out where they are at with their learning, find out what they already know, find out where the deficiencies are. You're gonna have to start there and fill in some of those gaps, especially we know with English and math, where those are continuity type curriculums. You might have to teach some of that overlap that they missed from that previous spring. So yes, the teachers have already been instructed on that, and we do have a plan going forward to shore up that gap before we go ahead and go on with new learning. Now, some classes, of course, since they're not really a prerequisite type class, that might not be as much of an issue, but definitely for the English and math, those types of classes, we'll have to go back and spend more time reviewing than we typically would to get everybody up to speed.
Right. And we know that in the return to learn law that was just passed, you got 30 days to do your assessment. You're gonna have to figure out where your kids are at. So we got to figure out where our kids are at, and then obviously middle school, high school, they're gonna have to adjust. I'm assuming that all of our kids will, you know, most of our kids, I should say, will be dropped. You know, they'll be dropped. There'll be some kind of drop just because of, we know the online learning is not as good. I think it'll be better this year if you choose to do it in Ubly with the way we're doing our in-live and teaching. But we know last year, like you said, was throwing a curveball. I think every school did the best they could. We know there's going to be some lagging behind of students. That assessment will give us a good idea of where it's at, and then we'll obviously going to have to take a look at how we're going to address that as middle school, high school, and elementary. And I think with the high school, we'll have a plan in place that will address that. And this year, we're gonna get kids caught back up to where they should be, and then go forward. And we live in that environment that we could be in a 3 or 4 situation for the year. So we'll all have to work together again, both at home and here at school. Can students backpack?
Yeah, I think that might be for you more than it is for me, because our kids only use their lockers once in a while.
Can students use backpack for the day rather than lockers? You know, and if that was a safety concern for a student that said, you know, I don't want to be crowded around my locker.
I think that's one thing that we're going to consider. Remember, schools have two. I don't want everybody out there to forget about the safety of the other side. So there's the safety of the COVID side and keeping kids safe and the virus, but there's also safety of the intruder, lockdown procedures, all those type of things. So those are still things that we are still going to do and have. And right now, one reason that we don't have backpacks is because of that. We don't know what's in backpacks and when kids are in classrooms. So we will take a look at that. I'm not saying I think that's one where we have to come back and say we will think about that and take a look at that. But remember, don't forget that there's still 2 other safety measures that we have to do in a school. And fire is one, lockdown drills, and a person coming in that could harm our kids. We have to think about that as well. So that's still there, but that's not something we wouldn't think about doing.
Right.
Sorry to cut you off there.
No,
I don't want you to.
We are working to figure out, Valerie, how to do the benchmark assessments at home. So some of them we can, it's not best practice to do it through the Zoom or through the My Teams or whatever else, but we are working to find the best practice to do it. We have a benchmark assessment that's online, but that's right now that's where we're going to work on it that way. But we will try to benchmark everybody, remote or virtually, and in-house with it. I guess my suggestion is that if you still have questions, do not be afraid to email either myself, Mr. Candela, or Mr. Warner about anything, and we will try to get back to you as best we can with those questions.
Is there any more questions?
No.
Not in the chat as of right now.
But we thank you guys for coming on.
You got anyone there? Well, we thank you. Like I said, we're still working through, this is still a work in progress. So things that come up, you always are welcome to email us, send us a note, give us a phone call. Our doors are always open for a suggestion, any of those type of things. We're all new to this too, just like everybody else. So we're work in progress. We've taken down some of those thoughts that you provided us that we'll take a look at. And we're doing the best we can. We'll probably, at least my part, it would be a good plug for me here. I used to do morning with Candela or coffee with Candela, but we didn't have a whole lot of people showing up in the morning. So probably 4 times a year, I'm going to do a Zoom. We'll call it evening with Candela, and we might have some special guests with us once in a while. And we'll probably start that in September, our first one. And you'll get an opportunity just to talk to me and ask me questions, and we'll work through the same process. I just think it's nice for you guys to be able to ask us questions and find out what's going on. So we'll start that this year, 4 times a year. We might have some special guests to ask questions and continue this process of communication with our community. So we appreciate you coming on tonight and asking the questions and us trying to provide you all the answers. We're going to do the very best we can. You guys have to know our #1 concern is the safety of your children. That's our #1 concern. Secondary is education. That's #2. That's the second most important, and that's really high up there. But we got to make sure your kids are going to be safe, and we're doing everything we can do to make sure that's going to happen. We appreciate you joining tonight and coming on. And like I said, if you have any other questions, please feel free to email or call us, and we'll try to address those questions. Thank you, though. Appreciate it.